This is F.D.Recovery, where we interview addicts and alcoholics.
Our aim is that through this podcast, we might help you on your journey of recovery.
Thank you for listening. Hello, this is F.D.Recovery. My name is Frank, your host, and I have two hosts as well that want to introduce themselves.
Yeah, my name's Dave. I'm an addict.
And my name is Eric. I'm also an addict.
Yeah. And today we have
Nathan Lopez, and I'm an addict.
Awesome.
Nathan.
All right. Well, let's crack this thing off. You know, the reason we brought you here is so you can share your story. You're going to tell the audience a little bit about you, you know, like where you come from, like where you grew up and all that.
Well, originally I'm from Sacramento, California. I lived there for 48 and a half years. And now currently, when I came up to Grass Valley, I came up to go to rehab, and I never went back to Sacramento. So that's where I'm at now, is Grass Valley.
Okay, so when did you start using?
So I started using, I started using alcohol at about the age of 12. And as far as other substances, right around 13, 14 years old, I started doing meth. And by the time I was 15, I was putting a needle in my arm. So, you know, it got really serious really quick.
Yeah, sounds like it. That's a pretty young age.
What were you trying to hide at that age? Did you want to get high?
Well, it goes back to my childhood. So really, I grew up in a really strong, God loving family. And I was very close with my dad, you know, and my mom, and I had two younger brothers. It was just like the perfect family, you know. And when I was 9 years old, we were at church one day, all of us, which is what we did. You know, it was church like 2 or 3 times a week. But my father had a heart attack in church. And we were all there. I didn't see it because I was in my own class. But, you know, he was a preacher, man. And after he gave his message, he had a heart attack. And he was DOA on arrival to the hospital. And so I guess to answer your question, it blew a hole through my heart, you know, at 9 years old. It shouldn't happen to any young person like that, especially, you know, being in the God-fearing family I was in. But what it did is it made me feel numb to everything. You know, I initially cried when I found out my dad died. But after that, there was really no emotion. I couldn't feel emotions. I couldn't feel anything, no matter how hard I tried, you know. So I was full of sorrow and fear and all these other emotions, and yet I couldn't feel any of them. So the first time I put something in my body, the alcohol, I noticed I was able to cry. You know.
So you drank originally so you could feel?
Well, it wasn't my intention for that reason. I didn't know anything about it because I was like 12 years old, right? But that's what it did for me, you know. And it gave me a chance to let those emotions escape or just be able to feel them as they were. And I wasn't numb, you know, and that's what started the whole thing.
Okay. So what age was that when you started drinking?
About 12 years old.
12 years
Yeah.
old.
Mad Dog 2020. Love it, right? Everyone's got a Mad Dog story in their life, right?
Always.
Yeah.
So
if you don't, you haven't lived.
That's right. That's right.
So what were your feelings between not when your dad passed and before you drank?
I was full of hurt and, like I said, pain and sorrow, grief, and fear. But I didn't realize those things in the time that you're talking about. It wasn't until later on that I started to realize what was really going on, you know. Look, when I was growing up, they didn't have these kind of therapies they have now for people that go through traumatic loss, you know. So what was told to me was, you need to be the man of the family, right? And it was God's will. Well, neither one of those sits right. Neither one of them, you know, seemed right to me.
Sure.
Yeah. And so I started to develop an attitude towards, you know, anything to do with the church. or God for that matter.
How was your school life during those 3 years?
Well, it was tough, because people they knew what happened, and I went to private school, and they were very kind and very understanding, but it still wasn't enough for me. It didn't. The weight of what had happened was just too much, and so I left private school and started junior high in public school, and that's when things really started to get really out of line with who I was and how I was raised. Mm-hmm. I was open to a whole new group of people, they grew up in a different family atmosphere than I did, and along with that comes new things. And that's when
Is that when the meth stepped in?
Well, that's when the meth stepped in, the weed, and more alcohol.
So, like he mentioned, the aspect of feeling again, or trying to escape a feeling. It sounds like it was both combined.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. It was. That's the thing. That's you're trying to escape the pain and the hurt, yet you want to feel the pain and the hurt because it's like a pressure cooker. And I didn't have any life skills at that age to deal with it. There was, how do you deal with something like that?
9-year-olds aren't equipped to deal with something like that. That's hardcore.
Yeah. And 50-year-olds aren't either. Believe it or not, I come to find out later on that the 50-year-olds
Well, I don't know that yet. So
okay.
You're getting there.
I'm getting there.
All right.
Did your siblings develop any substance abuse?
The youngest one did. The middle one, no. But the youngest one did. But he didn't. He was still kind of he ended up dying from alcoholism 7 years ago. He was 38. So, but it wasn't. It was different. He didn't even get a chance to know my dad.
How old was he when your dad passed?
He was 9 months.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah, 9 months. My little brother, the middle brother, was 7.
So you were the oldest.
I was 9. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. So was that a lot of pressure on being the oldest? Did you feel like you had to step up to the plate, or how did that unfold?
Well, that's what I was being told. Is that that was one of the things that was told to me a lot. Is you're going to have to be the man of the family now. How do you be a man of a family at 9 years old?
You can't. Yeah.
You can't.
You're a child.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what age did your younger brother pass at?
He was 38 years old.
Oh, that's young. So do you think that added fuel on the fire of your addiction?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I've been losing people in my life since I was really young. Yeah. And it just seems to be a theme with this family, There's 3 generations of fathers that have died in this family, starting with mine. Yeah. My little brother was a father, and then my son was a father also.
Yeah.
So.
Your son.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, what do you want to know?
Well,
tell us what happened.
Okay. So my son, my youngest son, Jacob Lopez, was shot and killed on May 23rd of 2022. He was involved with, with the gang life, and he was involved with the drugs. He had a very serious opiate addiction, and it had just started with him too. I mean, he progressed faster in his addiction than I had, and he was also a rapper out of Sacramento. His name was, they called him Lul TYS, and he was shot and killed on May 23rd of 2022, and the thing is that I always had this fear that I would lose someone again, really, really close to me. I mean, my brother was very, very close to me, but losing a child is something completely different, So I know what it's like to be a son to lose a father. It's come full circle to be a father to lose a son, so very, very hard.
And you're in recovery at this time.
And I'm in recovery, yeah.
Yeah. Because I do remember that morning when you gave me a phone call.
Yeah.
It sounds like it had just had happened, and that pain in your voice. But you had people to call, right? And that's the whole recovery process.
Absolutely.
Why don't you speak a little bit about that and how you dealt with that in recovery? Because I think that's important to relay.
Absolutely. So it was Jacob's mother that had called me. It was about 2 a.m. when she called and told me that Jacob was involved in a shooting and he didn't make it. And so from that very moment, again, it kind of made me numb, right? And there was so many emotions that go through me at one time. I've never had to deal with something that all these different emotions, pain, grief, sorrow, anger, hurt, loss, loneliness, and they all happened in milliseconds of each other. You know, that's the one thing I remember. But I also remember that I couldn't do this on my own. I knew that. So I reached out to as many people as I could, and I let everyone know what was going on. And, you know, the strength that I pulled from other people was absolutely necessary to carry me through, because there was times, and there still are times, that it's even hard to breathe, hard to walk, you know. And my support group that I had built through recovery are the ones that carried me through. You know, you guys remember, you guys were there at the service, and how tough it was. And the beautiful thing is that no one tried to run any kind of program stuff down to me, you know, at that time. But all they did is be there for me and allowed me to talk and express the way I felt. I'd called Dave numerous times, just not being able to do anything but cry, you know, and he listened, or he'd come pick me up and we'd go out and get something to eat. But yeah, absolutely. I did a lot of terrible things in my life growing up, you know, being an addict and living that kind of lifestyle. But to think something like this would happen while I was sober was absolutely the farthest thing that I could have thought.
Yeah.
You know, you figure if something bad was going to happen in your life, it would happen while you're out drinking and using and running amok, right? Well, it did, and it came at 3 years sobriety. You know, I've been clean and sober for 3 years when this happened.
So I want to back up a little bit. Tell us about your parenthood, what it was like raising Jacob up to the point that you lost Jacob, and how he took his path and you had to allow him to do that.
Right. So Jacob was a unique child from the beginning. He's just very talented at whatever he did. He excelled in anything he put his heart to, you know. So it's a joy to watch your child be able to just catch things so easily and not have to struggle. I've got 3 kids, and each one of them had their own struggles, but Jacob just had this unique ability to be able to really to do anything he put his mind to, you know. And so we got him in baseball. You know, baseball was a big part of his life, and you know, I got to be able to teach him how to throw and catch.
Nice.
And we spent a lot of time on the lakes and the rivers fishing. He loved to fish. That's one of the things that my dad taught me that I was able to teach my kids, you know. And Jacob just loved it. It was just one of the favorite things we would do is go out and just go fishing. And there's sometimes, you know, I'm that dad that would pull him out of school to take him fishing. You know, it was that important to us. And right around the 6th, 7th grade, he started to change a little bit. Me and Jacob's mom had divorced when he was 4 or 5 years old. So it was tough going between parents. You know, divorce is a terrible thing to happen to a family, and it affects each family member different. And I know what Jacob wanted was for his family to be back together, but that wasn't going to happen. It wasn't best for either one of us. So, we started noticing, start getting calls from the school, that he was acting up, or that he was fighting, or just doing something that was just not right in front of the other kids.
How old was he then?
He was around 12 years old. Around 12 years old when all this started.
You were obviously still in your addiction, right? Even through all this.
Yeah, I was severely addicted to opiates, the pain pills.
Okay, so were you able to guide him through any of this, or was your addiction stopping you from, making those connections?
What my addiction did was it kept me away from him, because there was times where I knew as his father it wasn't a good idea to be in that condition around him. I had a hard time staying awake while I would drive, and I didn't want to put anyone in the car, and because it was just dangerous, and how do I want to say this, is that I wish that I could have spent more time with him, but because of my addiction, it took me out of that. It took me out of that role for a while. But the times we did spend together were great. It was just absolutely beautiful.
So he took on baseball too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the kid was. I tell you what, he was small, right? But right around 13 years, it was 12 or 13. I couldn't even play catch with him anymore because it hurt. You get that pop in the glove when we play catch. He was just a natural. He played travel ball, which is for the best of the best. It's Little League baseball, but it's for like it's for the MVPs. It's kind of a thing where they, you travel all around and the best of the best play. And he actually had we got a letter from some college, a couple colleges that wanted to scout him, and he wasn't even in he was barely in junior high, so he was really, really good at it. It was a beautiful thing to watch too,
So you said that. When he started acting up, it's right about the same age you started acting up.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely some similarities in that.
Yeah, there's you had loss.
Yes.
And he had loss from mom and dad divorcing.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was very, very hard on him. And like I said, when I started getting heavy into the opioid use, I know he kind of got a little resentful, because there's times where I'd be nodding out at his games. He wanted me to be there, but I could just see the disappointment in his eyes. And that's a tough thing for a kid to watch. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. So, when that phone call came in, and you picked up the phone, at least you had a support group to help be there for you.
I did. I wouldn't imagine of what would it be without my support group.
You'd be getting high.
Yeah,
that's the reality.
Right. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is something that
no doubt.
No doubt.
Yeah,
if you don't have a support group, man,
this is something I truly believe. I'm a man of faith, and I believe that God brought me to Grass Valley 5 years ago to surround myself with beautiful people like you, right? Because I couldn't stay sober in Sac. I just couldn't. It was too big. It fell through the cracks. It was just, there's such a tight-knit recovery group here.
Yeah.
And 5 years ago, he brought me up here.
Let's try not to do that in the mic. Right. Bless you, buddy.
In fact,
Tickle and sneeze.
Yeah, it's the people that I built as a support group were going to be there when my son passed, and I really do believe God knew this ahead of time, and that's why He brought me up here. So, yeah, I just that's what I truly believe.
So, do you think that you've, I wouldn't say found some sort of closure, because I know that's a hard thing to even bring up so soon, but what do you think that looks like for you, that closure piece? Because obviously you'll never get over the death of a loved one, let alone your child, but what does that look like for you, at least in a recovery sense?
But to be quite honest with you, I really don't know when that closure moment is going to look like or when it's going to come. You know, there's so much that we're still dealing with. It's only been 2 years, but there's still so much that we have to deal with Jacob's business. You know, he was a musician. You know, he had 2 kids. So basically, we're raising his kids, which is quite an honor. They're beautiful children.
Yes.
My grandkids. And I work with just a wonderful grief therapist. You know, a grief therapist who's also part of the program, and she's been absolute miracle for me. You know, so as far as closure though, like I said, Frank, that's a tricky word.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think there's ever real closure, but right now things are there's times when there's so much anxiety and there's so much raw emotion and feelings about what happened and how it happened that you know, I still utilize my recovery group, you know, to help me get through it.
Well, I think you kind of mentioned it in there, like your steps you are taking. I do believe that gets us closer to the closure that we're talking about.
Right.
Obviously, you know, there's still going to be a wound there. But I think you're speaking on that by saying that, you know, the grief therapy down to the raising of his children. That's important stuff. That all leads to that place of closure, you know.
You know something that I thought about not too long ago. When I was in Sacramento before I came up here, if you would have told me that you're going to get sober, right, and you're going to completely be moved from one town to another, not knowing anyone, and you're going to start your life over again, and then you're going to lose your son from gun violence, I wouldn't have never got sober at that time, right? It would have, everything happened the way it should for me to get up here to prepare myself for this.
Yeah.
You know.
So
that's heavy shit.
having walked through something that difficult, you know, you said you came up here for rehab.
Correct.
What did the journey look like from the time you got into rehab to today as far as your recovery? Like, what did you do from the time you got out of rehab that got you strong enough and connected enough to be able to walk through something like this?
Well, I say, you know, originally, believe it or not, I came up to rehab for my kids. You know, it wasn't for me. I had no love for myself at all. Right? I was just tired of inflicting pain on my children and those that are closest to me. So, you know, I came up here to go to rehab, and, you know, it's not like it was my first try at it. I'd been trying to do this thing since 1989.
Damn.
You know, right? So
It's older than me, bro.
I know, right? I'm not even old, bro. I'm ancient, right? Prehistoric. But the thing is that before I come up here, I ended up in the psychiatric hospital, and
They didn't keep you.
No, they didn't, right?
They released you?
Right, absolutely.
I only laugh immediately because I have a little bit of insight on that story, and God, is it funny.
Yeah, you know, it's but I realized when I come up here that this was probably the last chance I would get to get clean and sober.
So rather than leave our listeners hanging,
Okay.
Yeah, let's give them a little insight of where you were at during that process, because funny enough, that's most likely a lot of our paths, not exactly, but there's some form of desperation that is in that story that the audience needs to hear for sure.
Okay, so, and one of my things was, you know, I hadn't done meth in quite a while, right? And so I got this bright idea one day to go try to do. I had done meth for like 5 years, right? And so I'm thinking, you know, let's go ahead and give it a shot, right? And so
I could handle it.
right, and I didn't realize the method changed.
once won't hurt.
Right? No, absolutely not. Right. But what ended up happening is I put myself into a meth psychosis. And I really could not, this is the truth, I could not differentiate reality from fantasy at all. I mean, and so what really ended up happening is a friend of mine that I grew up with, she was in the program. And she had some sober time, and I hadn't talked to her for years, but I was in such a bad place, and that I called her up, and she asked me one thing. She goes, "Are you finished?" I'm like, "Yeah, Robin, I need help." So she came and picked me up from where I was staying, and she put me on her couch, and she says, "I'm going to couch you till we get a place for you to go." Right? Well, sometime within the first day, I started having these like weird hallucinations, and this whole it wasn't so much paranoia, it was just these weird hallucinations, and that's all I can remember up to that point. I just flipped out, and I was like I said, I was like nachos, I'd lost my cheese, right? And so
Slid off.
yeah, we were sitting there watching a movie, me and my friend, and all of a sudden the movie became like my life right in front of me, right? Like I was actually playing this person. And I think we were watching Deadpool at the time, and so that's kind of weird, right? But there was something wrong, definitely wrong, and it got to the point where she had to take me to the hospital, right? And I don't know if you guys have seen, the X-Men movies, right?
Absolutely.
There's a professor that has a thing he wears on his head. It's called Cerebro. And so I'm in the doctor's office, and I start yelling Cerebro because he's asking me questions like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm in the emergency room. They're like, "What's wrong with you?" And all I could yell was Cerebro because I knew they were reading my mind, because they always are, right?
Yeah, of course.
Right, they always are. They're, and so things just spiraled out of control from that moment, and the next thing I knew, I was wrestling demons, right? And what I remember about that experience was that I really thought I was wrestling demons.
It's because you were.
Well, it turned out to be the hospital staff, right? And so I got, that's who it turned out to be.
It was Halloween. They're wearing horns.
Right? Yeah,
they're all dressed up.
and the trippy thing about that is that the demons would ask me, all you have to do is say that you want to quit. And it involved my family too, because what was happening when they would start fighting with me, the demons, my family was also there, my brothers, my kids, and it's every time they'd ask me that, I'd say no, and then immediately they would start to hurt my family, they would start to hurt me, and it was a physical. I thought it was a physical altercation with these demons.
Was Jacob there at the hospital that time?
No, Jacob wasn't there. It was just me and my dear sister Robin and Julie, we were both in the program. And you know what the thing is so I'm thinking all this is happening, my eyes must be closed, right? Because I'm seeing these things in my head, and come to find out later, no, my eyes were open the whole time. She goes, Nathan, we looked right through you. And here I am trying to get into rehab, and I just blew it by just going on this psychotic episode, right? And
the lights were on and no one was
right,
home.
Exactly. And that was a first and a last for me, It really just the things that I had seen in my head and just the craziness that went on was absolutely so fearful, But I just knew they were reading my mind,
That's because they were.
They were, right? They do that now. So, but yeah, that started me. Eventually, what happened was I got out of the hospital. So I thought I was in there for like 2 or 3 hours. I was in there for 3 days. And when I got out, I had these purple marks around my arms and my ankles where they tied me down. If you know me, I'm not of that nature, but so it was absolutely just terrible.
Well, we know you're a weirdo. They finally figured it out.
Right.
That's reality.
Yeah, I mean, that was a real reality check when I looked at my wrists and my ankles, and I'm like, where's all this purple? And they said, you don't remember anything. The doctors looked at me and they said, you don't remember anything, do you? I'm like, no. So it was, they said, you ever get high again like that, you're not going to make it back.
So do you think over time that you've gained some recollection, or you still just don't remember most of that?
I remember the wrestling the demons, and I remember them asking me who my children were.
Okay.
And I was able to name my children. But That's all. That's really all.
Let you know the power of this, man, that we're facing.
Oh, absolutely.
That whole, because I have very similar stories. I mean, to where I was completely out of body in certain scenarios where people were telling me I was behaving a certain way, and I didn't remember any of it. You know, so that's the power of what we're dealing with here is, when you're checked out like that. I mean, I was checked out for years. You know, I'd shoot a bunch of dope and just do a lot of horrendous shit,
Right.
and don't remember most of it. I mean, it's not like I was completely blacked out, but there was bits and pieces of what I was doing that I just either was blocking out or just going too much too fast.
You know, the thing that one of the things that I think about is the doctors had literally called my kids and told them that, you know, your dad might not make it. And they called my brother also, my middle brother. And what this disease does is it's not just you. It affects everyone in your life, you know. We've had all these deaths in the family, you know, and now they're hearing that their dad might not make it, you know. And so that was one of the things that I took with me up to rehab, and one of the things that motivated me to continue to fight for my life.
How long before you went to rehab up in Grass Valley?
Did
that happen?
It was about a week.
Oh, okay.
About a week.
So you had a week clean before you went into rehab? Is that how it happened?
I had a week clean from meth. Yeah, when I went to rehab. But you remember, I was still in that.
Because I do remember you coming in. I think you were in detox, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you were off meth, but you were still actively using.
Yeah, I was
opiates.
taking opiates. You know, I've been taking. I had an opiate addiction for 20 plus years, and you know, but that's not something I wanted to address at the time, because, you know, they were prescribed by the doctor, which makes it right.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, I was.
It's all legit.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I was
My
able to.
name's on the bottle.
Yeah, right. How can
It's
it
all
be
legit.
Yeah, how can it be wrong? It's legal, right? But that drug in itself, the pain pills, was absolutely the scariest drug I'd ever done. Even though I'd flipped out on meth, because I couldn't imagine my life without pain pills. How was I going to do that? You know?
Yeah, I had that very similar experience with Klonopin.
Yeah.
Where,
Well,
I mean,
that's a good one.
oh yeah. But it was the buffer for all my trauma and everything that I've been through, right? And the stuff I wasn't addressing, the stuff that didn't allow me to live in my own skin, right? So I would use that, and I could never see life without that.
Right.
No matter what I quit, it was just like, I have to have Klonopin in my life. So that was like that was the hardest one for me to really reshape in my thought process, because no matter what I was doing, that was the one where I can get it legally, and there was a lot of benefits. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
Right. There was a lot of benefits. I wasn't constantly having anxiety and all these things that I would continuously have when you're dealing with mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, and some of that PTSD that follows us from all the stuff that happens in our life. So I think that piece, when you address, you know, at least for me, when I was like, wow, I finally got to a point in my recovery where I don't have to have something. And it took a lot of work to get to that point.
Yeah, you know, I started taking pain pills because of my back. I worked construction my whole life, and so when the first pain pill I took, it's like it was like the pain was gone. It's like someone wrapped a blanket around me, and it was complete euphoria. It's like, this is for me. This is the answer I've been looking for.
So then getting and using and finding ways and means to get more, what kind of methods do you
that's a good
execute?
That's a good one, because, you know,
How many doctors were you seeing?
yeah, I'm a plumber, you know, and so I calculated one day, I've been in about 10,000 bathrooms, and every bathroom there was a medicine cabinet. And, you know, that was me, and I could have a whole bottle.
Is
of
that
pills.
why my Viagra's missing?
Right. You know, the thing is that it didn't matter how many pills I had to go through their medicine cabinet. If there was something there that would get me high that I knew about, I'd take it. You know, and I mean, when I take it, I mean, I'd steal it.
Absolutely.
But I was being prescribed pain pills for 20 years, you know, and it was during a time when they were giving that stuff out like candy, you know, because remember, Oxycontin wasn't supposed to be addictive, right? That's what the companies were telling people, you know, and so the doctors were prescribing like that. So I was getting an amazing amount of pain pills.
Yeah, because there wasn't enough research, all that. Yada,
Right.
yada.
Yeah. And now we know the truth about it, you know, and that's what we're dealing with now is what's going on with the fentanyl crisis and whatnot.
Yeah, that's heavy.
Yeah.
The things that the threat that it holds on an addict nowadays is much more severe. I mean, that helps me stay clean and sober, man. That's some scary shit. I've known a lot of people to just get taken out.
Right.
And that keeps me sober, bro.
And you know the thing that's scary now is it's not just in pill form that they're finding it. We just had a friend that we were in rehab with, Colin, very young kid. Mm-hmm. You know, he died from a fentanyl overdose, but he got it through meth. He thought he was doing meth. Mm-hmm. You know, and so and you hear these stories all the time. Robert, his brother, same thing. You know, and it's just heartbreaking because death is forever. You know. There's no do-overs, and so a big part of my recovery today is speaking to young kids, and talking to them about the dangers of these drugs that are out there. You know, that's part of what I do. It's like part of my calling. Like I said, my son Jacob struggled with opiate addiction really bad, and the irony is that we had him scheduled to go into rehab, the same one I went through. And he wouldn't get in the car. It was already set up. They had a bed for him. 30 days. You know, he was gonna stay there. He didn't go, and a week later he was taken out by a bullet.
Yeah, see, that's the game of inches that I spoke about in a couple of meetings, especially at an alumni meeting. It's like a game of measurable inches where you're just like a simple one choice, just it's really that severe, you know.
We've seen people, you know, in the rooms we're in for recovery. There's so many people that come in that don't stay, and yet there's so many people out there that never make it to the rooms. You know, and my son was one of them. You know, he realized he had a problem because he'd text me and he'd call me about it, and you know, Dad, I need to stop. I need to go to a rehab, and
not only did he have the drug issue, but he also was living the gang life too. Yeah. So he had two heavy demons on his back that eventually overtook, you know, especially with that, because when you go to the root of it, that was all that gang life. That's what happened, you know, and living that way, it's, you know, his addiction and the gang life, man, it's the life we're all going towards, right? It's not, maybe not all of us with the gang part, but it's very similar. That chaotic.
Sure.
There's always guns involved. There's always violence.
Adrenaline.
Yeah.
It's adrenaline, you know. That's the thing that surprised me about Jacob's. I knew about his opioid addiction, but I didn't really know what he was doing with it, as far as the gang part of it. You know, that was something that really caught me off guard. I thought I was going to lose him to an overdose. Yeah. You know, and I was prepared. You know, I especially the last couple of months of his life, trying to get him to you know, to take the Suboxone that we had got him. You know, and to try to get him clean off that stuff. And so when we were able to get him in, you know, we're able to secure him a bed at the rehab, I'm thinking, oh man, this is all going to come together. You know, this is God's plan. You know, finally I'm able to do something for my son that's, you know, to help him save his own life. And then it didn't happen. He was, like I said, he was shot and killed. And
well, I remember a year, maybe 2 years before that.
Right. Yeah.
He was getting involved in guns. Mm-hmm. And you were scared to death.
I remember that too, Dave.
And he was, you know, on the run. He had to do a little jail stint, scared to death, and he just stayed on the run. And you were scared about him getting shot and killed back then.
Right. Yeah, I remember talking with you about it. It was a real worry of mine. You know, it seems like today that as far as society and the young kids, they want, they're so they glorify that so much, the gangs and the guns and the drugs and the women. Those are all the things they see, and it's taking out generations, not just their generations, but if they're their children's generations. If they're not here, they can't have children. We're losing so many. Excuse me.
Yeah, there's so much of that culture, especially in the
Right.
rap world, and there's so much of that culture that exists where they if you got a gun, you're about it, and
Right.
it's just so far off from the truth, especially when you lived in the jail and prison life and in that surrounding. The whole concept of it is just, I was watching people come in there with 25 years of life, a bunch of kids that had that same mentality, couldn't fight worth a shit, but they were ready to kill you. So it was just like, so the toughness scale is flipped around. Back when I was growing up, you were tough because you stood up for yourself and you can fight with your fists. You know what I mean? And now it's all flipped. It's like,
Right.
you can kill someone and you're tough. That's not tough. Obviously I don't want to bag on someone's lifestyle choices and stuff like that, but it's really flipped in this past 20 years to where gang or gun violence is considered tough, and and the damage it does to our community and also to the people that it takes out.
And something else it does, Frank, is it almost, and this is one of the most terrible things about that, is it's almost normalized now. It happens all the time, right? You turn on the news and it's some kids getting shot, or someone. It's society has started to normalize it, and so it's such a sad thing. The same thing, you listen to these rappers too, when they're in their music, they're always talking about guns and they're talking about perks, talking about pills. That's the other thing that's taken out the young generation besides guns, and the two go hand in hand, really.
You can't really have one without the other, especially because when I was running out there, I always had some sort of weaponry on me.
Sure.
And because the level of paranoia, you put yourself in dicey situations, you're carrying dope, you're doing a lot of stuff that requires protection from somebody that may or may not want to rob you, and there's different scenarios like that. So I do understand that whole concept of it. So when you're out there, it kind of comes with the territory. But yeah, to get it to so normalized like it is it's a hardcore thing, man.
Right.
So the night that, or the 2:00 in the morning call you got from your ex-wife, tell us a little bit more about that.
So, for like a year or two before Jacob passed, I'd always kept my phone on top of my nightstand, in case, I got a call, one of the kids needed me, or, and I've had Jacob call me. He called me one time at like 1:30 in the morning, and he said, "Dad, I love you." I'm like, "I love you too." I said, "What's going on?" Right? And he goes, "I'm about ready to get arrested." I'm like, "For what?" And he turns out I said, "Well, let me come pick you up. He was up in a tree, hiding from the police. He took off on foot.
I told you there's tree people.
Yeah. My kid, Jacob, was an athlete. No one was ever going to catch him. That was the thing, So he took off on foot. But the point is I kept my phone on my nightstand for those kind of calls. And on May 23rd, I got a call at 2 a.m, and it was his mother. And so automatically, I already knew it had to do with Jacob. And I could tell in her voice, the way she said my name, the way she said Nathan. And, she said it 3 times, and she couldn't talk. And then she finally got it out that there had been a shooting and Jacob was involved, and he didn't make it. And from that very moment that happened, all I knew to do, besides get down to Sacramento and figure out what happened and be there for his mom, and I started calling people right away in the program. Mm-hmm. And my son, my oldest son, has been sober for over 3 years, and this happened, while he was in recovery too. And the thing is that I had to be the one to go in there and tell him, hey, we got to go to Sacramento. Your brother's been shot and killed. Mm. And the next thing I told him is, I said, no matter what, we don't pick up, we don't drink, we don't use, and it's going to be hard, Justin. I said, but we're gonna make this.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and we just hugged for a bit, because that's really all we had at that moment was each other. Yes. I mean, and that's my oldest. That's the only other son I have. Mm. So
good kid too.
Thank you. Yeah.
Good kid.
Yeah.
Still clean.
Still clean. Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely is. And he struggles. So as a father, I grieve differently for my son than Justin does for his brother. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I understand that, because I said my little brother, my baby brother died 7 years ago. And so I understand, it hits everyone different depending on what your relationship was with the person that died.
Absolutely.
And so, but the one thing that I love is the fact that we're able to talk about Jacob's life, and we're able to talk about the good things that happened to him. And it's a bonding moment. It's like me and the times fishing with my son, how me and Jacob bonded that way. Me and Justin were able to bond over the loss of his brother, mm-hmm. in a way that no one else can, because no one else understands how I feel and how he feels, how his mother feels. Yeah. It's something that and I hope no one ever does have to understand that. Yeah,
that's some tough stuff, because not only that family dynamic piece of it, nobody's going to understand the deep emotional connection of the loss like you guys are going to, because they don't have the same memories, they don't have the same Christmases, all those things that you guys encountered with each other, grew up, that's some heavy shit,
Yeah.
And for me, when you bring it back to the family dynamics, it's just like, if I lost my brother, I'm really close to my little brother. I know that would affect
me. Your little brother's a good man.
Yeah, he's definitely working on himself. That's for sure.
Yeah. Randall's is such a good man.
He's a good dude.
Yeah.
But that piece right there, But I do know, as far as the love that I have for my children, that's a different level.
Right.
That's a different level of love. I would kill for my daughter. There's something animalistic about the level I would reach to protect my family, you know what I mean? Right. So and then also the level of love that coincides with that, there's a lot of passion behind it. So to experience the loss of that is...
And it got to where, at the beginning, I had to go back to basics as far as what I was taught to do in this program, what the program taught me. So for the first 2 weeks, I had to pray for this man's family that shot my son. Mm. Because if I didn't, it was going to devour me. Yeah. So I was, Dave's the one that suggested it.
Yeah, Dave's an asshole.
I know he's a dick.
Pray for him.
Right. Pray for
him. Pray for me. That's hardcore. That's worst case scenario. Mm-hmm. But when your sponsor can still tell you need to pray for him, it tells you the power of that. Because not only would someone saying that advice, you have to have some balls to say that advice, Dave, because you're talking to somebody. You get what I'm saying? So that's the power of that, is to be like, you need to pray for him. That's how important it is. I don't care how much hate and anger you have right now, and even hearing this is hard, but that's the suggestion you needed at that time, because it's that important.
Right. It was back to basics, man. Mm. my emergency reserves in the program kicked in, because like I said, I couldn't make the smallest bit of decisions. And here I am trying to plan a funeral out for my son, going through these waves of emotions. And the thing is not once did I think that picking up or putting in was going to make it any better.
And that was a hardcore service, man. It almost felt, it got to that level of gang violence almost there because of all of his so-called homeboys that showed up. No disrespect to anybody, but that was hardcore to brandish a weapon at a funeral like that. That was hardcore for even us to deal with. We're just like, what the? I was pissed just hearing that was happening.
Yeah.
But that grief does a lot to people, and people grieve differently. They were upset. They lost a buddy, and I get it. And that's that life, though.
Right.
When you experience the gang life and you have anger and passion, that's the only way, that's how that translates, so, but even going through that service was pretty hardcore and pretty traumatic.
Yeah. So
before the
ahead.
service, I want to hit something on this because there was a lot of planning.
Right.
And we sat down and talked about a fear of yours.
Yes, I was just going to, can I go ahead and?
We talked about a fear, and it was open casket.
Yes.
Okay. And I shared that fear with you that I had an experience that I had of the first open casket was my best friend.
Yeah.
And I was 16 years old, and it freaked me out.
Mm-hmm.
I could not go to another funeral. It was 3 years after I got clean. I was 53, almost 54 years old when my sponsor's daughter, her girlfriend, asked me to support her because her dad died. I had not been to a funeral since. Even my ex-wives. Okay? I could not do it. That freaked me out that bad. And you had that same experience.
Yeah. So it started with me when my dad died when I was young, 9 years old. He had an open casket funeral. And, I had never experienced death at all. So the whole idea of seeing someone that... My dad was also very, very physical with us. And what I meant is a lot of hugs, a lot of hands-on, he was just a good man, And so when I saw him in that casket and I touched him and he was cold, it absolutely just, it freaked me out. I opened up his eyelid and his eyes were rolled back. I just didn't understand anything about it, and my mom, bless her heart, she would take us to go see him, during for the viewings. And I look back now and I go, my goodness, that was just absolutely the worst thing that could happen to me. And I got a very, very real fear of death and bodies and coffins. I couldn't even watch movies that portrayed someone in a coffin. It was too much to watch that. And I had nightmares for so many years. And I never I didn't go to any other open casket funerals until my son. It was time to bury my son. And I hadn't seen him for a couple of weeks before this happened, before he passed. But so I wanted to see him. And so we had talked about it, and I told you my fear, and you told me your fears, and it really, making that connection like that on that same fear was beautiful, Dave, because I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew I was going to do it, and the day of his service, because we didn't get to see him before the service. The day of his service, I got to be a part of the people that walked in to view the body, and I couldn't keep my lips off my son. It was the most. I was the first person. It was different than my dad. I loved my son differently than I loved my dad. But like I said, it just after that funeral for my father, I couldn't do any more open caskets. And so when we were planning Jacob's service, I said, yeah, we're going to do an open casket. And I just remember this extraordinary faith that I had from nothing for me. It was from above, that I was going to be okay, and it was going to be okay to get through this. And so, yeah, I was the first person to see my son come into the world. He was C-section, and I was the last person to see him before he went out, because I closed the casket door when the service was over. And I don't fear it the way I did when I was a kid. That's one of the they call it the silver linings, from this whole thing. Is I went through such a big period of growth over the last 2 years, and a lot of it hasn't been easy at all, but getting through that part was really important for me. And now I've only been back to see his grave like twice, because what I believe in my faith, he's no longer there, and because of the circumstances, I have to make sure that I don't get too caught up in the emotions of a grieving father, because it brings out it can bring out a very dark side of me. And like you're talking about, the anger, and it's just
the key thing, the obsession.
Yes, right.
That obsession piece.
Right now, it's like I have to either live on the light side of life, or I'm going to live on the dark side. There's no middle, And
No middle of the road solution.
No, there isn't. It's like the 11-step prayer. That's exactly where I need to be.
It's like what the struggles you're dealing with now, especially with, the release of said person that took your son's life, right? Dealing with that and seeing him free and knowing him free and all these different pieces, and also the bravado that goes along with it, because that him too was in that gang world.
Right.
So, having to deal with that, can you tell us how you're dealing with that?
Sure. So, it's almost like the same as when Jacob passed. I get my support group involved, because I trust you guys like I trust no one else, and I have to let you know what's going on with me, because I cannot deal with this. It's too big for me. It's too big for me. And so I have to get vulnerable. That's the first thing, and not try to pretend like everything's okay, because it's not, and I've got the greatest grief therapist in the world, and also I've got my son's boys. And those are just that helps keep me grounded and in perspective. These two boys are going to rely on me to help them to grow and to be the man that they're supposed to be, the men they're supposed to be.
Absolutely.
And if I can't be there for them in the capacity that's that's healthy for them, because I'm so busy caught up in the anger about and the violence and then what good am I to them?
Mm-hmm.
So that's that I think that's the answer to that question is I continue to do what I was doing, when Jacob passed, and I've been doing for the last almost 6 years. It's involving my support group and letting people know I'm not okay, right?
So you talked about the dark side and the light side.
Yeah.
So initially, with the possible retaliation heavy on your heart, and your oldest son as well, not going that route and turning to the Lopez strong and the justice for Jacob, and is advocating with other families in similar situations. You had mentioned turning away from the church at the situation with your dad.
Yes.
And then you talked about praying for the young man's family. Where is your relationship with God or your higher power today?
So my relationship is with, it's weird because it's the same higher power that I had when I was younger. But when I came back to the program, I got a different understanding of who that was. I went to a Baptist church growing up. It was like fire and brimstone. You're going to go to hell. Right? all these things that they, that they teach in some of the churches. But when I came into the program, came back to the program, I learned that my higher power, who I call Jesus, is a loving, forgiving, trusting being and he wants the best for me. And when I look back at my life, I realize that, some of those prayers I prayed for 20 years ago, they did come true. It just wasn't on my time.
Our terms.
Our terms, right. Being in that addict mentality, we want everything to happen overnight, But I prayed for so long for so many things for my life, and most of them have come true.
Well, the good thing about prayers or manifestations, we're lucky there's a delay system in place. Because
absolutely right.
Imagine if you wanted an elephant now and it just popped up in this room. Right. It's important to have that delay button because, because sometimes it's not always a good idea. What the fuck am I going to do with an elephant? You know what I mean? So there's that delay piece because what
We've
happens?
been wondering about that.
Yeah. Why do you want the elephant?
Right.
But the reality is that time from your aspirations and dreams and things like that and your prayers, because I do believe they're all combined in some sense. There's a reason why either there's a delay or there's that time in between so you can recalibrate and realize what you really need in this life. Like initially, because if we got everything we wanted right away, it'd be a shit show. So at least for me, when I because there's the women that I wanted in my life, the things I wanted in my life at the time, I'm sure glad I didn't get. Like some of the women I would have still been with.
We've seen them.
Right.
Some of the women, some of the cars. There's a reason why they didn't stick around, because that just wasn't meant for me, right? Because that delay thing is important. Like, because now what came to my life naturally based off of the work that I've been doing and some of the changes I've made within myself, it's gonna stick around, right? I don't have that person that I talked into or manipulated or showed the false self about myself. What I did was I just was inherently who I was, and I attracted the person that I was meant to be with.
Right. The thing is too is that we don't know what God's plan for us is. I don't know why my son was taken when he was taken, or my little brother, or my dad when I was 9. I mean, here's a family that went to church. We went to church to honor God, and he takes my father. But
that's a resentment right there.
Yeah, and I've struggled with that for a long time. But when I was taken to my knees by my addiction, right? Mm-hmm. That's the only thing I knew was to pray to Jesus, and ask for him to help me to walk through this. And like I said, if I look back at my life, there's so many things that happened that can't be explained how they happened like that, And I know now it was Jesus watching over me.
It was JC.
Yeah.
How old are you now?
35. No, I'm 55 years old.
55.
Yeah, 55.
And you've been praying for that your whole life.
Yeah.
Okay?
Right.
Now looking back on it, you can realize that you've been praying for it. You've been getting it.
Yeah.
Okay?
And to Eric, to what Eric was saying too, is that I realized that there's a plan for my life. It isn't the one that I would have thought it would have been, but that my story can touch other people.
Right.
And that, that was part of what helped me to get through this too, was that knowing that people are looking at me now. When someone loses someone close to them, I don't care, everyone thinks, are they going to make it? Are they going to relapse? Mm-hmm. Are they going to get through it? It's just what happens, So I felt too that I would have to, I wanted to make sure that people understood that my recovery is what was getting me through the things that I had learned in my recovery and the way I walked, the way I held myself. And just because I was a mess at times and could do nothing but cry and be emotional, doesn't mean that I didn't have those tools still, And so that's, like I said, that's what I do today. I'm able to, because of who Jacob was, I'm able to talk to a lot of young people that knew him. Right. And it warms my heart because they struggled with the same things Jacob did and I did. And it holds a little more weight when you got a guy that goes in to talk to a school and he's 55 years old and he's talking to young people. Everyone's going to think, oh, yeah, he's just an old man that lost his game. But when I go in as Lul TYS's dad, it automatically gets their attention. And then I can go ahead And I can share my life story and share Jacob's story. Dave was there at the school that I talked to up here not too awfully long ago.
Yeah.
And so that's part of my mission, man.
What I hear from that is I like to say like spiritual alchemy, right? Being able to turn a bad situation, that should affect you in the worst way possible, but be able to take the lessons and the blessings and able to shift your spirit to align with God's will and your higher power's will, and find that place of healing and actually put some positivity into the world. Because it's super easy to get really beat down by life and go through a tough situation and say fuck everybody,
right?
Because I did that for so much in my life. But that spiritual alchemy is kind of like turning it into gold, right? Where you can take that bad shit you're experiencing and go, okay, I can make it through this, and I'm going to turn it into a positive and start giving back. Because a negative situation happened, and now you're able to take it in, transmute that energy, and put it back into the world in a positive way.
Brother. That's very well put. Yeah. Right.
Kind of like two magnets, you put them, the positive and positive, they kind of like push away from each other. Okay, or you turn one around and they draw towards each other. So,
and it's also healing too. I'm a grieving father. And just being able, when I hear someone speak my son's name, it just warms my, without me telling him anything. And they say, "Oh, you're Jacob's dad, aren't you?" It happened at a meeting the other day. Yeah. We were at. He looked at me and he goes, "You're Jacob's dad, aren't you?" It just does something in my heart. It's healing for me. I need to hear his name.
That recognition of that love for your son.
Yes.
And then also being able to have that channel open up. It's 100% healing, right? Because knowing that there's a lot of love out there for your son, somebody that was a huge part of your life, right?
Yes.
It's your son. So, but also being able to see the impact and reflection to the world around you and people that you don't even know. Right. So no matter what his involvement was, he really touched a lot of people no matter what. There's a lot of, how many times I listened to hardcore music, gangster rap, this, that, and it was healing for me in certain parts of my life and stages of my life, right? I listen to way different music now, but when I was going through that hardcore portions of my life, I would listen to a lot of negative stuff, but there was a lot of healing in it, and it got me through those tough times. So not to just say, because I know he was involved in some pretty serious stuff, but, there's people out there in different phases in their lives where that's helping them through. You get what I'm saying? So I think it's important that whole acknowledgement piece to that, and also what you're talking about of that recognition and seeing your son's body of work being recognized and connecting through that. I think that's pretty badass.
So what happened that night when he passed away? There was a shootout.
Right.
And the shooter got shot as well.
Yes.
And give us a brief rundown about legal consequences, what happened with him, and where he's at today.
Right. Did you want me to
explain it? Yeah.
Yeah, so my son was shot 20 feet in front of his front door of his apartment. That's where the shootout was at, and there was no witnesses, there was no video, and the man that shot my son was the only one that survived, so he was the only witness, and he claimed self-defense. So the district attorney decided that they didn't have enough evidence to prosecute. So they basically, he did 2 months in jail for the machine gun he had, because he had prior gun violations. He did 2 months in jail, and they let him out. Well, then 6 months later, after they let him out, he gets caught up again with having a Glock with a switch and high capacity magazines, and for that they sent him to prison, where he did 1.5 years. Now, mind you, none of this, there wasn't one charge filed in my son's death. And the official report from the homicide investigation called it a murder. They wanted murder charges, but the DA would not the DA wouldn't take it on because there was lack of video or witnesses. So when this gentleman was caught 6 months after after he got out of jail, he ended up getting a short prison term, and he just got released. I think it was 6 or 7 days ago. And the first thing he did when he got out, he starts posting about him, calling himself the Reaper and just things that that are associated with what happened to my son. So this is the next chapter I'm going to have to deal with. Is now that he's out, he's.
How old is he?
Let's see, he was the same age as Jacob, so he's 22 years old.
22 years old.
Yeah, 22 years old. And so I have to make sure that I continue to grow and I continue to heal, because this is really, I mean, losing Jacob was hard, but watching someone that considers this a badge of honor of what he did, is even harder because it brings it stirs
a lot of anger.
A lot of anger, yes, a lot of anger, and almost to where it's rage. You know.
What tools are you using to walk through that rage, that anger?
Well, the one thing,
fear,
right. The one thing that I do have is I've got my beautiful grandchildren that I know are relying on me to be there in their life. That's one thing. The other thing is I go to grief therapy. It helps me process some of the emotions and feelings that I'm having in situations like this in a healthy way. My contact with Jesus Christ. I spend every day. So I work an hour and a half out of Grass Valley. I work in Sacramento, and a good half hour, 45 minutes in the morning are in prayer. Or I turn it over and I pray for specific people that are struggling, and I pray for the knowledge of His will for me and the power to carry that out. And so I'm also being part of advocates against gun violence and advocates against fentanyl. It allows me to be of service to other people, which is a big part of my healing. Is being able to take the things that have been such major things in my life and other people's life, and try to help them navigate their way to be able to live happy, joyous, and free.
Turning that pain into power.
Right. Exactly.
That's important, right? Because we do learn the powerlessness, especially through the 12 steps, but what I mean by power is that the sanity piece.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Because that was a huge thing for me. It's just like I didn't realize that I was completely insane the whole time, right? And but having that back, I have my faculties back and my brain. I'm like, whoa, dude, So there is some personal power gained as far as that, and able to proceed with confidence and self-esteem through that, because you can't have self-esteem when you're crazy.
No.
At least I struggled with it. That's for sure. You can't really you can have all these false ego, pride bullshit, but when you're in insanity and powerlessness and something's controlling your life and it's unmanageable, the reality is you're just living on the seat of your pants.
Right. And, Frank, the thing is too is that one of the most uncomfortable feelings in the world is being insane in sobriety. That is absolutely next level stuff, right? Yeah. And I've had that. I've had that before, and it absolutely it's worse than it is when you're out there drinking and using.
It feels disgusting because you feel it on another level, like you feel it on that spiritual way, like You feel it in your bones, where before you used to have things to deter you,
Sure.
and be able to distract you, but just to feel it and go, ew. Like when I was sitting in that jail cell at 2 years clean and sober, going, ugh. Still sober too, not even high. I was pissed. Turning myself in right in this same fucking parking lot.
This parking lot. I got a picture.
He took a picture of me
cuffed and stuff.
I remember your mugshot or whatever they
called it. Yeah, dude. What the fuck?
Like the look in your eyebrow is like it just you have to see it to understand it. But it was something else.
And the funny thing is I share with people is in that classification officers was there. His name was Jacobs, and he was a part of Project Heart, right? And he fucking just, this is the only time I ever had any kind of law enforcement was any good up to this point. He opened that door and he came in there and he sat with me.
Yeah.
And he just leveled with me and chatted with me like a normal human being, right? And that was the first time I ever felt love and compassion from somebody else. And I had a chance to share with them that later, how that impacted me, right? And it was really that turning point. But that right there was because I had the chance to drink
right
immediately after they were coming to knock on my door for the warrant, right? I went over to my boss's house, right? And they were all shit-faced drunk.
Yeah.
But immediately I was like, I can't be here. But at that point I realized, man, I don't want to use. Mm-hmm. Because I saw it and it didn't look attractive, and I went immediately to my friend's house, my homegirl Liz, and I said, "Dude, I need to go over there. I have a warrant for my arrest right now. I want to do it the right way. I want to connect with my sponsor, turn myself in. I don't want to get caught like I'm running,
right?
You know, because that's not the idea. I just want to have a game plan, be able to bail myself out, and do things the right way, and figure this whole court stuff out. So." But that was the turning point for me, where I was just like, I was in the midst of that insanity,
right?
That midst of that insanity of just whoa, dude. It's like I was shooting meth, dude. Like I was the walls were closing in, and I was like, wow. But it was that point where I realized I didn't want to use. I was like, holy shit. And that was the first time I ever been in a tough situation like that, where I didn't think about shooting meth or using.
Right. That's a trip you say that, because when I talked about, the all the grief and pain that I went through with losing my son, the thought of picking up and putting in, it was never even, I haven't had any urges to get high for the last 6 years, right? Part of that reason was knowing that if I did pick up or put in, there's no way I would make it out of it. It's the situations we're dealing with in sobriety and life. Sometimes can be emotional enough as it is. Can you imagine throwing some kind of chemical in there it would absolutely been that.
Sprinkle some meth on it.
Right, yeah. Right. But, watch it.
It can all start
of meth.
Right. It can all start with a beer.
Right.
Yeah. And it's a wrap.
Yeah. I've seen you, Frank. I've known you for 6 years, right?
Yeah.
And I've seen your growth, man. And you're like one of those dudes that, it's like,
I'm a grower, not a shower.
Miracle. Prove it. Right, a miracle, I mean, it's just watching how much you've grown and how you do deal with certain situations. It's not like you used to deal with them before.
Well, the point I was making about the insanity, right, and going back to it, is that was a point where I realized I had a change in my recovery.
Sure.
I was like, I got to a point to where I was like, holy fuck, I can't let this happen again.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And once I got to that point, like me and my girl I haven't fucking put any kind of violence towards the situation. I said one stupid thing one time and I immediately got into my truck and left. But that was it. Right. But you don't get to that point. Me and my wife, we were like, at that point we weren't married. We were like, whoa, we don't want to do that again.
Right.
Because immediately who calls her? All these detectives, you know how bad this guy is. Starts telling you, because they want her there, they want her the special witness, all this stuff, to where like so they tell you how horrible this person is, and they go, do you know who you're dealing with? Because I have multiple felonies, a lot of violent assaults and shit, and so they were just like. But she realized how delicate the situation is. She's like, I really care for this person, and how we're behaving, because it was a dual thing. We were both being fucking idiots. Me mostly because I have the choice that in the end that will have the worst outcome.
Right.
And I realized that I had to really mind my P's and Q's. It doesn't matter what everyone else does, because I realized that's what you need to do anyways. But the consequences of me acting out is much different than somebody else.
Right.
So because my acting out usually ends up with a violent situation happening and somebody getting hurt. And for the longest time, I thought that was tough and I thought it was cool, but it just doesn't work like that.
Isn't that funny how our recovery, you don't really know until you're battle tested, right? And then when that happens, and I was even upset that I wasn't thinking about drinking and using when my kid died. I'm like, what the hell kind of addict am I? What's up with this? I got an open check. I've got a free check where I can go out and just get.
And nobody been.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
Right.
No, you don't.
No, I don't.
No, you don't.
Right.
You don't,
No,
but-
right. what I'm saying, but
You could easily rationalize that. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, right? And like I said, I was even upset with myself. I'm like, why aren't I thinking about getting fucked up?
Yeah.
And so
Because you had that psychic change that we're all talking about in the program.
Yes.
I want to get back to something.
Okay.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
Is it the rubber chicken again, Dave? Because I can't do any more than one. Okay?
You know, I know.
Hey, whoa. Don't bring anonymity. Anonymity. Don't bring up the rubber chicken, bro.
Don't bust out the rubber chicken. So, the shooter got out.
Yes.
Okay. And you and I discussed this the other day. The life expectancy of the gangster rapper dudes, the kids living on the streets making bad decisions, right? He's 22 years old. He's running around with guns. He's, with large magazines and automatic weapons, and you're running with gangs, and life expectancy is short.
Mm-hmm.
It's short. You know that firsthand.
Yeah.
And here's a guy that just, he got fortunate and lived through the shot. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then he got hemmed up and did a little prison time and got out. Now he's the Reaper.
Right.
He's got a label. How long do you think he's going to live? Probably not real long. Okay. Someone's not going to like him, not going to like his nickname. Hey, that's my nickname. It's just stupid kids making stupid decisions, acting out very stupid. Okay. So it's not a matter of if it's going to happen. It's a matter of when it's going to happen. Okay. So, and you and I discussed that, when that happens, what would be your feelings around that?
It's a good. Yeah, I remember that conversation we had. Yeah. Right now, I'm torn. To be honest with you, on one hand, I feel if anyone's going to take him out, it should be me. Mm. That's the one thing. Will that bring me that satisfaction? I don't know, or that closure you were talking about. Mm. And on the other hand, the spiritual side of me hopes that he's able to get his stuff together and move on with his life and get out of this terrible cycle. This kid, he had a very, very hard upbringing, which doesn't at all make it right for what he did.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of torn, on that, how am I going to feel when it happens?
Well, I think that, that's a good word, torn for it, but you already know that answer, right? The reality is, if you want to continue this spiritual path and this life of recovery and healing yourself, you already know the true answer is, that those are things that are going to naturally come up of like, oh, it's got to be me. But the reality is there's not a spiritual life and sobriety in the life you want to continue to lead, and helping these people heal, reaching out, being the platform. There's not a life where those could exist with each other.
No, you're right.
That's the important piece to kind of remember. Obviously, you don't want to just shut out what you're feeling, and because that's completely natural. But that's just something I want to bring to the table. There's not the life and trajectory you're on right now. Those don't match. Those don't coincide. So
that's what I was telling Eric. When I said about living in the darkness or living in the light. Because if it's gonna be where I'm seeking that personal revenge, for my son, then it's gonna be in the darkness, and I know what happens down that road.
You've been there.
I've been there, right? And it'll absolutely not only take away my life, but what about the life of my grandchildren? What about the life of my wife or my other children I have? I've still got 2 other children. It would take, the damage it would inflict on them would be the same damage I inflicted on them when I was in my addiction.
Absolutely. And so, but given this path of recovery, you're able to look at that.
Absolutely.
You're able to see those things. And even through something as such a tragedy as what you're going through, you can still at least activate some of those parts of your recovery and start being that beacon of light, because people listening to this and seeing what you're going through, all their excuses seem like shit. I know for me, like when I start bowing up about stupid shit, and I'm like, when I hear a message like this, it's important to remember, like, wow, why am I sweating this stupid shit that I'm going through when this person over here can stay completely sober and go the path they're on, and they're still helping people. It's a beacon of light, and that's important for people out there to understand, is seeing other people's struggles. That's why it's important with this whole experience stuff and listening to people's stories, how important it is, because you can right size your life real quick by hearing somebody else's story and how they got through that and going, wow, oh, I didn't get what I wanted for Christmas. Realize it helps you put things in perspective when you start going, wow, maybe I don't have it so bad. You know, and I think that for our ego and pride, that's a necessary part of this whole recovery process, is right sizing yourself constantly, and being able to be on this path that you're on. You're going to help people tremendously. And just this message you told us today in this podcast is going to reach people, even if it's as small as our community. One person's enough, because that's all it took for me. Right, I'm just one person, and I've changed the life not only of myself but my children and my wife, and the ripple effect, right? So there's
some things that you're doing, you know, to raise awareness to gun violence, to you know what it's like to be a parent losing their kid, and as you know, that you're not the only parent that's lost their kid,
right?
Okay? And no parent can tell another parent how to grieve the loss of their kid. That's an individual. That's a personal thing.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Very personal. And who could put a time limit on how long it's going to take for you to grieve? I can tell you, my sponsor lost his son. Okay. And I was about 3 years sober. And he was on a camp out, and at the time I lived with him. And I was at the house, and he was in Yosemite, and I got a phone call from him, and he said, "Jimmy's dead." And it was just silence, right? I said, "What do you need me to do?" You know. So I didn't know what to say. I didn't know. Yeah. I had no idea. All I said is, "What do you need me to do?" And he said, "I don't know yet." In that headspace, it's like, I have no idea what that headspace is like. I have no clue.
I could share that similar story, yeah.
So it's what you've done for your, you know, to grasp on to sanity, to grasp on what has led you into a closer relationship with your higher power.
Absolutely.
The things that you are doing. Do you find that sufficient?
I always do. When you say sufficient, do you mean as far as, do I feel like I'm doing enough?
Isn't enough.
I personally, I don't think that if I could spend 24/7 on doing the things, those kind of things, I would want to do it. You know, that's a really interesting question, Dave. But at the same time, you know, I have to realize that I do have my limits too. You know, and if I don't recognize what those limits are, then I'm going to be out of balance, and then nothing gets done. You know.
So I know you're doing stuff, you know, alumni for a treatment center that you graduated from, and you know, going to some meetings here and there, and your relationship with your higher power, but it doesn't stop the thoughts that happen to an addict's mind.
No.
What kind of thoughts are going on in there?
You know, when it gets a little dark, like I said, the things like anger, revenge, you know, they start to become part of you know, of my thought process, and it's very, very uncomfortable. But
what program tools are you utilizing to walk through that?
well, like I was telling him earlier, I use my support group. You know, I talk about feeling like that. I use my grief therapist where I talk about those kind of feelings and emotions because those are going to come up. You know, I don't care how spiritual of a life I'm going to live. I'm always going to think that what happened to my son was wrong. And because he was taken by a bullet from another man's gun, it just puts a whole different angle on it.
Yeah.
You know, I thought he was going to die of an overdose. And to believe it or not, I would have been able to deal with that. I think a little differently. You know, there's so much I don't know still, but no, it's talking with my loved ones. It's talking with my support group. It's talking with my therapist. You know, don't have any secrets because as an addict, you know, what doesn't come out, when they say it doesn't come out in the wash, will come out in the rinse. You know, so I have to make sure that
you do rat on yourself every morning with me. So.
Right, those are little morning counseling sessions over at Robinson's with Frank.
Rinsey.
Dude, he rats on himself.
It's
big
like
time,
attack
dude.
therapy though too. I swear.
Yeah, right. Like you motherfucker.
Yeah, he's got everyone else over there involved too. So no, but and this is going to be something that I'm going to have to continue to do because I've noticed the kind of the anger and the hurt. It's over the last couple of years. It's actually changed now that the shock value is wore off of losing my boy. So it's become more of a reality, which at times makes me more angry.
So we are reaching the end of this podcast. We'd like to wrap it up. We'd like to ask some spiritual questions.
Sure.
Right now in your recovery, what are you doing on a spiritual plane, like a spiritual level, to keep yourself safe? I mean, to keep yourself in tune. Like, what are some of those things look like?
Well, I continue to read the literature. You know, my contact with Jesus is the most important. You know, and I continue to be of service. That's spiritual for me. You know, that's probably one of the biggest ones, because if I'm not doing something for someone else, then I'm completely into self, right? And we already know where that gets us. You know, so that's a big part of it is being there for that person that needs me, for no other reason but because I love humanity. I love people. You know.
So, there's a dear friend of ours that he's passed a long time ago, and I remember him. He turned into my service sponsor because I had a habit of diving into way too much service, and
You, Dave? No,
not Dave.
Especially early recovery.
No.
You know, and secretary in a lot of meetings, both fellowships. You know, anyways,
like a true addict.
It was giving everyone rights, right? Yeah. And it was my high. You know, I mean, I'm basically getting high on that stuff, right?
Yeah, that energy transfers, it's off the hook.
Yeah. So my sponsor suggested that I get a service sponsor, and so I didn't understand what that looked like, and he said, "Why don't you check this guy out?" Right. So, anyways, it turned out to be my service sponsor, and he said, "There's a difference between recovery-based service and service-based recovery." Okay, and I can spend all my time, you know, in service and think that that's my recovery,
right?
Okay, and make it look like, hey, I'm recovered.
Yeah.
When really, all I'm doing is the masking of the things. You know, look at all the stuff I'm doing. You know, and all that's do is feeding my pride, my ego. All right, and so he kind of checked me on that. You know, and I said, whoa.
Yeah.
And there's a big difference with recovery-based service, you know, being able to actually share what we got, you know, and give something to someone and without even noticing, or anyone being able to know what we're doing.
Yeah, that's when you start entering that spiritual level.
That's a different spiritual plane, right? It's doing a random act of kindness and never getting caught. And never telling anyone about it.
Yeah.
Oh my
You mean
gosh.
we're not supposed to post it on Facebook immediately?
Look at what I did, right? And
Hey, I found this $20. I thought, I took it right to the person I thought dropped it.
yeah. So it's important that we have that, and when our cup is empty, right, we got to fill our own cup, right? And if we don't, what are we pouring from? All our hurt and pain and all this stuff, and it's filling our cup is so important, so that it overflows onto others, right? So.
Yeah, that spiritual piece of it all, that it breaks through when you get to that level. I had to learn that the hard way many times. But I would like to say thank you, Nate, for showing up.
Yeah, buddy.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So I want to touch on so spiritual warfare is real,
Yes, absolutely.
right? And a lot of your story relates directly to that. Right? And for me, the third step is a great tool for that. And the topic of the darkness versus the light, I love it. We have one of our brothers that talks a lot about you can't exist in the darkness and the light at the same time. And the darkness is reaching for everybody constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And the trick to that is to constantly reach up and turn the light on, because the darkness goes away in the light.
Right.
And so that spiritual warfare piece, it's a constant battle, for everybody.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's just constantly reaching up and turning the light on. And I really appreciate you bringing that to the table.
You bet. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah.
Really appreciate you coming and sharing, getting transparent with us. And,
You bet.
Yeah.
and I hope that, our listeners are going to be able to pick something up out of this, to see what tools they have to utilize to walk through a possible same situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole recovery, people helping each other through experiences.
Oh,
man.
yeah.
It's proof to me this thing works. The recovery, your recovery works.
Absolutely.
Because without it, but this thing actually works. It's battle tested.
Oh, before we close up, can you tell the audience your clean date?
Oh, it's October 24th, 2018.
All right. We keep saying we're going to make him say that in the beginning of the podcast, and we just totally derail. Forget it.
Dummies.
In our defense, this is number 3 for us, right?
Yeah.
So I just want to thank you, Nate, for showing up and being a part of this podcast and being able to record this message for some people out there that may need to hear this.
I love you guys.
Love you too, brother.
I love you guys.
We love you
Each and
too.
every one of you.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. This is F.D.Recovery. My name is Frank.
My name's Dave.
My name's Eric.
And thank you, Nate, for showing up.
You bet.
Right on.
Peace. Thank you for tuning in to FD Recovery. A reminder, be kind to yourself on this journey of recovery. Also, call your sponsor, get connected to local support groups, and for one day at a time, stay clean and sober.